Okay, Neil Schwartz, Mastermind live with Laura Heigl. Laura, welcome today. Woo! All right, good job. You'll have to unmute yourself, Laura.
I just did.
Okay, fantastic. So, Laura, I'm excited, really excited, and I know a number of our agents are. We talked about this a few times over the last few weeks that you were going to join us today. We had an opportunity of meeting and hearing about Laura at the production retreat in January in Las Vegas, and Laura was interviewed by Mike Ferry. She did an amazing job and really moved the audience in many different ways. And I don't want to take any of her thunder, but I think that we'll have her talk a little bit about it. So Laura, first of all, can you give us like a little Reader's Digest version of where you work, how long in the business, maybe how many transactions last year, how many were buyers and sellers, just a few of the statistics?
Yes, I can. I've been in business for 18 years in real estate. I became a team in 2019. My background was pharma sales out of college and then medical sales. I worked in the operating room. And last year as a team, we did 90 sides. And generally, I am about 50-50 buyers and sellers. And last year, just with changes in the market, I was 60-40, and that's unusual for me. So 60% buyers and 40% sellers.
Interesting. Okay. And your number, the 60-40 of the 90 sides, was about what? Your portion, you're responsible for?
So out of the 90 sides, I was 60 of them.
And about 40
last year.
Right. And about 30 of those, 40 of those were buyer sides?
Correct.
Okay.
40%, Neil. Sorry, 40%,
So
not
24.
40 of them. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay, great. So a good number of transactions. And you're in what state?
I'm in Indiana, and we live in a cute little suburb of Indianapolis. So it's the Indianapolis metro market, but I work mostly in the suburbs across the north side.
Okay, cool. And you've done that pretty much for 18 years?
That's true. Yes, we've lived for 30 years.
Got it. And so you say you were in pharmaceutical sales or apparatus. You said you were in the operating room?
So out of college, I worked in the Bay Area and had a sales territory from San Francisco down to Monterey and Carmel.
Wow.
And I sold drugs is what I like to tell people. So Johnson & Johnson is who I worked for, and I sold over-the-counter pharmaceuticals. And when I found somebody to marry, we moved to Chicago because he was going to do an MPA and an MPP and an MBA. University of Chicago offered him money. So we moved to Chicago for my husband to go to grad school. And I transitioned to operating room sales at that time. And I loved it.
So tell me, operating sales, what?
So I sold disposables. So first I sold what we call packs and gowns. So a surgical gown is disposable. And then for every procedure, you create a sterile field using disposable drapes. That are essentially pieces of paper, but it's a little more high tech than that. So that's what I did initially. I was a national sales trainer in that company. And then I moved to building what's called custom procedure trays. So high volume surgeons, if you do knee arthroscopies, you would have your own kit that it just would be one great big package. It's like a picnic basket, but you open one big package and everything is in there. And it reduces the turn times in the operating rooms from pulling things, because literally they can pull hundreds of things for a procedure. It's in that great big kit. And that's what I built and did that for a number of years.
Wow, very cool. So you found a need and a niche and went after it. So,
well, and what I liked is I was helping people do their job more effectively. And if I did a good job doing my job, it impacted their outcomes, which is very similar to what real estate is.
Very, very true. Very true. So how was the transition between that? In pharmaceuticals, that you were probably being paid fairly well.
I was, and ultimately, and I'll give you the Reader's Digest version of what happened. My company came to market with some technology that was really cool, but it was before its time. And the moral of the story is, if you sell one thing at a loss, when you sell more things with the same margins, you lose more money. So they kind of had an implosion going on, and the top reps were all jumping ship and going someplace else. And at that time, I was pregnant with our third child, and we had a baby born with Down syndrome. We were not expecting that. And my husband and I felt like the best outcome for her was somebody to be home for a while. My company was imploding. He works in business finance for a large pharmaceutical company here in Indy. He has great benefits and he had a steady paycheck, and we felt like I would stay home. So it just was a good family decision. And we were really fortunate we could make that choice. Not everyone can make that choice. So I stayed home. She did incredibly well. When she went to kindergarten, then I went and got a real estate license. That I wore a pager, and when back in the day when my pager went off, I had to go. So we had a nanny that was always on call, and real estate was so much easier from a time demand, because generally I'm not meeting with people at 5 o'clock in the morning or things like that. Things would happen and I would have to go.
Right. Okay. So that's how you transferred
And that's why. Exactly.
got it. Okay. Totally understand. So how did you get your business back in the beginning?
That's a great question. And I had to figure out how to go get business. So the first thing I did is I started calling expireds. And also there was somebody, and we're active in a church, and my kids played soccer, and my kids were in private school. There were a lot of things that were sphere, but the whole problem is there were 10 realtors for every one person, and they all had a reputation and they were all known, and I wasn't going to get the business from my sphere. So I started calling expireds. I started doing open houses. There was a lady we knew that was going to be moving to Alabama. So I started stalking her neighborhood because I was hoping I was going to get her listing. And long story short, I didn't get her listing, but I did take an expired listing in there as my second listing. And it's in a very nice neighborhood. And that spun, I did an open house. I didn't end up representing the buyer, but I got a bunch of clients out of there, because in the process, I did so much ridiculous homework for that expired listing appointment that I sounded like I'd been in real estate for 7 years. So I knew my stats, I knew the competition, and it was such a nice segue to getting a lot of business and establishing myself.
So maybe my assumption's incorrect, but the training you got in pharmaceuticals, in terms of knowing your product, knowing what was going on in the industry with your products and other products, was paramount in you being successful in the pharmaceutical business, and you transferred some of that into real estate. Is that kind of what happened?
I would say I transferred most of that. The phrase in medical sales is be good or be gone. And I was there 12 years. And I left of my own accord, just in circumstances. I was the only one in the state that worked for my company. I saw my manager probably twice a year. He didn't know what I did. He didn't know if I left home, but the numbers don't lie. And my numbers were great. So the year one of our daughters was born, she was a high-risk pregnancy. She was born in May. They said there was no maternity leave back in the day. And they said, when do you want to come back to work? And I said, well, after Labor Day would be good. And they said, great, have at it. We'll see you. And I just still wore my pager and answered phone calls and did what I needed to do. And that year again, I was our top sales rep. And even though I was off for 4 months of the year. And so our national sales meeting manager looked at the guys, and there's a lot of golf played in my industry, and said, what have you guys been doing while she was home with a newborn baby? And then he looked at me and said, I don't care if you ever get dressed and leave the house again, just keep doing what you do.
Whatever it is you do. Right.
But that kind of taking care of the business, going and getting the business in sales, that's absolutely anything that you're selling. So I needed to learn real estate contracts. I needed to learn those things, but it was all the sales training I had and what I did as a background.
Got it. Okay. So you got in there and you said you stalked the neighborhood. Tell me what does
Not
that
a
mean to
threatening
you?
way. Can we
No,
say
I
that? Not in
understand.
a threatening
I
way.
understand, but tell me what you mean by that. I mean, it's an interesting word to describe follow-up and door knocking and phone canvassing.
So I started by previewing every home in the neighborhood. Something would come to market and I would preview it. I didn't have clients. What else would I be doing besides previewing? And then I branched out and started previewing all the homes in the competitive neighborhood to that one. These people that we knew that lived in the neighborhood, I touch base with her every so often and say, hey, would you like to know what's going on in real estate, your neighborhood? No obligation. And she'd say, sure. So I'd share information, but that's what I started doing. And then, and I knocked on some doors to say, hey, there's a lot of activity in your neighborhood. I didn't even know the scripts, but said, do you know anyone who's thinking of selling, because these neighbors' homes are selling really well. And then one of the homes that I previewed expired. And when I had previewed it, the lady had been home. And so when it expired, I just went to their door and she took one look at me and she said, oh, I'm so glad you've come to the door. I was going to try and find your name. And, so we had a conversation and she brought me back to talk to her husband. So that's what I mean by stalking the neighborhood.
I mean, doing your job.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was figuring out what my job was, because I'd had a real estate license for probably 3 months at that point.
Well, I have to tell you, this is right down our alley. I didn't even know that about you because Mike had taken you in a different direction. But I'm thrilled with this, because the truth is that we have trouble getting agents to preview homes, to share that information, and then the preview expires. It's like Robert actually left because he's laughing on the floor all the way to the bank, because that's what we teach. Good for you, Laura. Good for you. You don't see any other way to do it and break into your neighborhood that was also being farmed, or as you say, that there was a lot of real estate agents for every client, right?
And they were good ones with good reputations that worked hard. And that was the big piece, as I looked at the soccer parent population or the private school parent population, handfuls of realtors. So why is someone going to pick me if I've been a realtor for 3 months when they have these people that have done it, 10 years or whatever else? So I had to go find people who didn't know any better. And then I had to learn all the information, so I had credibility.
So that was the second piece. And you did that by previewing property, looking at the statistics, things like that.
Looking at running CMAs. I had to learn different price points. Honestly, this neighborhood that I started in is a lot nicer than my neighborhood, or it was at the time. And so I had to adjust price points from a standpoint of learning what that is and learning what things look like. Because when you go to your friends' homes, at least for me, I don't run around and look at their backsplash in their kitchen and make value judgments and that kind of thing. I'm there for social reasons. So I had to do a lot of education to be able to be a resource for these people.
Good for you. So the first year in business, 18 years ago, mostly expireds and door knocking, things like that. How many deals?
I think I did. Yeah, I think I did 11.
So 11 deals your first full year.
Yeah, I sold enough real estate to call myself a multi-million-dollar producer, because I sold a couple million worth. How about that?
All right. We like that. That's good stuff. So you continued that similar effort second, third, fourth year?
I did, but I I got smarter. It yielded repeat business. I knew the value just from working in the operating room. Having relationships with surgeons and OR nurses was super important. So I knew the value to continue to do that in real estate. So I sort of started taking care of them and reaching back out and sending them something at Christmas and things like that. I kind of just sort of made it up as I went. But it started yielding more business. And then what happened is I developed a decent reputation for what I did. Then I started getting referrals, and I was no longer the realtor that, had 3 months in the business. Now I'd sold a fair number of houses to be a contender.
That's great. So how long was the ramping up period, would you say, from year one to when you felt like you were a contender?
I can remember, and back in the day, I did not track on numbers of transactions, which would have been really smart. I had not learned to do that, but I can remember I would do 25 to 30 transactions a year, and know that back then I wasn't doing it full time because we had 4 children. 3 were in private school. 1 had Down syndrome with a fistful of therapies and things like that. So my 25 or 30, I would do about $15 million a year in business, and juggle that as much. And I hate to say it, clients didn't know it, but part-time. I was always available to them. But because I had kids in private school, I was picking them up at school at 3:30, and it was important to me that I got to do that. So I would build that, like half an hour driving to school. I would make phone calls on the way down. And then I had 30 minutes contained with them to hear about their day and everything coming home. And then they'd shift into homework. I would shift into more phone calls. We do dinner homework while they went to bed. Then I started back in email. I started looking for more expireds, and my day would start super early in the morning before my kids were up. So it was fairly part-time. I think I could do it better now, knowing what I know.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're one of those part-time fabulous successes. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. You just
Good
do
stuff.
what
Are
you
you
have to
full?
do.
So Laura, are you full-time now?
Very much so. Yeah.
Okay. So what does that look like for you?
Well, so everybody now is out of my house. Out of our house, I have 1 in college. So my days have changed a lot, and my day starts about at 5:30 in the morning. And I'll do some reading at that time, some affirmations. I look at email, I'll exercise. And then I have an early team call 1 morning a week. I'm on the phone with our admins and that kind of thing. And then I start prospecting pretty much right at 9, unless I'm running late on that team call. Prospect 2.5 to 3 hours, depending on the day. Mondays I don't, because of Monday morning mic calls, if you will. And then I do lead follow-up and any kind of appointments in the afternoon. Because I work with buyers, I have learned that I really need to manage them and their time demand. So I don't jump every time somebody sends me a house to go see. There's some things that they have to do, but I'll fit that into my afternoon, just like I would an appointment.
So let's shift gears and go down that buyer street with you. Okay.
Okay.
Because most of the agents we interview focus a lot on their listings and almost do no buyers. In fact, they say with pride, I don't work with buyers. I don't put a buyer in my car. Clearly, that's not the case with you. So remind me, how many buyer deals last year?
Oh my gosh, now you're making me do math in my head.
Give me the numbers. Give me the
60
numbers.
transactions, 40% of 60 is 35, 38, something like that.
So
Right?
38.
Out of 60?
Yeah, so 38 buyer deals out of 60.
Right.
So 40 buyer deals along with running your team. And how many people in your team?
This year we have 2 licensed agents. I have a director of operations that has an active real estate license. an assistant, and someone who does marketing and listings for us. Last year we had 4 agents. One moved, and then one we just met and felt like she was not a good fit for our team going forward.
And you're okay with letting people go and that kind of
Yeah,
thing?
and you know, it was very mutual, and I wish her well. And she's out there as a single agent, and we have accountability hurdles, and that's pretty important. So I'm excited for her opportunity.
Good. So 38 buyer sides obviously takes a little bit more time, effort, and energy to put some of those people in. So you, as I remember the conversation, you qualify them before you do much with them, correct?
I do. Yes.
Could you walk us through that, what that looks like?
Yeah, and I'm happy to send you, if you end up wanting, I'm happy to send you my pre-qual. And then I do a buyer meeting as well. So kind of here is my theory. If I am looking for a new attorney, for instance, or interviewing somebody for something for our house, then I want to meet with them first and have that information. So I'll do a meeting with them. That's kind of my freebie. I do a pre-qual call before that. I want to know if they have their money and all of those things. It basically looks like what Mike asked us to find out. And if they don't have, if they're coming with a lender, so they already have something, I want to see that pre-approval prior to meeting with them and know specifics. If they need a lender, then I'm going to send them a list of one of ours, and I ask them to have that mortgage conversation and have that done before they meet with me, because that really impacts what that looks like. How much can they spend? And sometimes what they think they can spend is way different than what they can actually spend, good and bad and otherwise. So they have to do those things. We have a meeting. It takes about an hour. We discuss what it looks like to work together and my expectations, and part of what I talk about. And then if they don't want to work with me, it's okay. But I really encourage that they go and look at houses. Now, if it's a gated neighborhood, obviously we're not climbing over fences, but that's not typically everything in our market. So I'll ask them to go drive around and look at houses, because here's what I found. If they hate the neighborhood, it doesn't matter how much they like the house. They're not going to buy it. So I don't need to drive around and look at a lot of neighborhoods and have someone tell me that they don't like it. So, and ultimately, I won't say it to them like that. I'm not going to say, oh gosh, Neil, you know, I don't want to drive you around, but I'm going to say, you know, Neil, as part of your process in looking for a home, you want to know how close it is to work and schools and Target and those things. I want you to drive around and be familiar with this. And then you tell me whether or not that's a fit for you. And if it is, then let's look at that house in that neighborhood. But if you don't like it, I'm just wasting your time.
Sure. No, that's great. Absolutely. And more importantly, wasting yours.
Well, and it's a waste of all of our time, right? And I told Mike, I had someone in December that sent me a spreadsheet with 31 houses that they wanted to see in a weekend, and our market was a little slower then. And I said, we're not seeing 31 houses, but this is what you do. You take Saturday and you drive and you look at all of those 31 houses, and then send me 4, and we'll go see 4 on Sunday. 4 is enough. Otherwise you get confused. And when they called me Saturday night, they said, oh my gosh, that took 9 hours. I'm like, yeah, how about that? But they gave me 4 houses. We went to see the first 2 of the 4. And they said, can we stop and just go write an offer on that house we were in? We've been thinking about the neighborhood. This was our favorite yesterday. And so I ended up showing 2 houses, and we wrote an offer, and it was accepted, and they closed the end of January.
And you didn't end up with an argument because they wanted to see 31 houses.
No, exactly. And but they did see 31 houses from the outside on their own, in their car with Google Maps.
That's great. Brilliant idea. Excellent. So what other qualifying are you doing with the buyers?
I'm digging into what their loans look like. So Indiana price points, I'm sure, are lower than what you all have. And so we do still have FHA buyers, for instance, and they can buy FHA homes. But before we show anything, in my case, my assistant will call, text, hunt down the realtor to find out, number one, will they take an FHA offer? And number two, will the house qualify? Because if they won't take an FHA offer, we're going back into multiple offers here, unfortunately. If they won't take an FHA offer, they think the house isn't going to qualify, then I don't want to show the house. So we scrub it up front, and then we'll just tell the buyer they can't see it.
Okay, excellent. Good stuff. There's a question here from Laura in Irvine. Buyer leads that come from online services like realtor.com example. After pre-qualifying the lead on the phone, they want to go see the house. How do you deal with that?
That's a great question. So I do buy Zillow leads. I don't take the calls unless my team is out of town or something. So my agents take the calls. That's a benefit to being on my team. So here's what we do, Laura, because you're right. They want to see a house. So we call it a freebie. We will show one house because they are contacting us about 123 Main Street or something. So we will show them one house. And after one house, then they have to have a pre-qual and talk with us before we go show a second house.
Got it. Okay.
We don't tell them that until we're at that first house with them. And then after we've seen it, because here's the thing, a lot of times they don't want that house, but the whole intention is to convert them so they buy something with us. And so that's when we step into what our value proposition is and how we can help them and what that looks like. And gosh, you don't have a pre-approval. Let's get that done right now, because you're going to be frustrated if we find a house and you can't buy it because your loan isn't ready to go. And these things happen at 9 o'clock on Saturday nights. And so we give one freebie. It's a great question.
Good. Excellent. Appreciate that. Okay. So what do you think your superpower is?
Oh my gosh. So in your office, Melinda Elmer is my team coach, and Melinda and I were talking about this the other day. Because I just think I try really hard across the board, but I think if we're going to call it a superpower, we talk a lot about a concierge level of service. And I think maybe it means something different to us than it would mean in lots of markets. And we work really hard to problem solve and take care of details, but not just in the transaction, on an ongoing basis. And that way we continue to be that resource for things related to their real estate transaction. And so here's a quick, easy example. I have a client that bought and sold a home with me last summer. It was pretty high volume for our area. Her husband has continually forgotten to have all the online delivery services rescheduled to the new house. So they show up on the old house. And I'm in a group chat with the new owner and my clients, and they were out of town and there were boxes there. And I you know that somebody wants them off their doorstep. My past clients are gone. I said, you know what, this is no big deal. We'll just pick up the boxes there at my office then, and you guys stop and pick them up. And you would think I created world peace with that. The reality is that house is on my way home. It's walking distance from my office. Why wouldn't we do that for them? So they closed last summer, but why wouldn't we take care of things like that now?
That's great. Great example and good customer service. Great customer service. Good for you. Appreciate it. You open to taking some other questions from the group?
You bet.
All right. Questions for Laura. Questions for Laura. Just jump in or raise your hand or go ahead, Josie.
Laura, at the retreat, hi, thank you very much. I thought you were wonderful. Great ideas I got. At the retreat, you talked about sending the buyer home with the purchase agreement.
Yes.
I thought that was a great idea. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes. So when I have that buyer consultation meeting, and I'm happy to send you guys just kind of the list of things that I go through with it. But one of the things we do is they leave with a copy of the Indiana purchase agreement. Our document is about 6 pages. I think yours is probably 30. I can also send it to them electronically, but I ask them to read it and prepare questions for me of things they want to discuss. That way, when we go to write the offer, we can focus on the offer in the house and not all of those pieces. My hot button in that document is what it says about inspection, what is negotiable, what is not, and what the state of Indiana defines as a major defect. I like to have that conversation at that buyer consultation before we are heat of the moment on something, because then I can refer back and say, well, gosh, Josie, remember we talked about this and the inspector doesn't call it a major defect. So this is going to be something that is reasonable for the seller to tell us no, that they will not fix.
Got it. Great thought, Josie. Does that help?
Yeah, no, I thought it was great. I thought you should share that. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. All right. Other questions for Laura? Jump up.
So Laura, in case the buyer say, oh, I pay cash, I don't need to go into a loan pre-approval, do we ask for any document showing that they have cash?
You bet. Then, and I have had, in the last year and a half, I had more cash transactions than I have had in the previous 18 years combined. So what I ask for at that point is a proof of funds. And that can either be a bank statement with their account numbers redacted for privacy, or it can be a letter from their private banker that tells us indeed they do have that amount of money. And then if it takes a little bit, like they send me one today and we don't find a house until April 8th, when I send my offer, I'm going to ask for an updated document so that the list agent looks at that and knows indeed they still have that cash.
All right. Great question, Ann.
Thank you.
All right. Good. Thank you.
Can I say
Laura.
one other thing about that?
Please do.
So, and I had this recently, Josie, and this is just me being picky on the list side. I had a cash offer. It was a woman's name, but the proof of funds had both the husband and wife on the proof of funds, but he was not on the offer. So I requested and obtained documentation that indeed he was fine using that money from that account to buy that house. Because otherwise I could fall apart over that.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good attention to detail, Laura. Good stuff. Okay. Other questions for Laura?
Just the
What do we
last
got
one.
here?
So in my case, I found out that if we don't tell the buyers from the get-go, they are going to qualify each home that we see, especially the one they're requested to see. And this is again for online leads. That is the ones that we get the most. I heard that you buy them as well. And, you meet the buyer and I usually tell them, you're going to qualify this house 1 to 5 stars. Anything that you give 4 to 5 stars, we're writing an offer on. And, usually we try to get them through the loan documents, etc. And we pre-qual on the phone. Do you have a system in which you kind of not force them, but tell them that you're going to be writing offers on?
Not out of the gate, because they haven't met me yet or met us and determined whether or not they wanted to work with us. So part of my intention in that freebie showing is to be prepared to have a conversation why we should represent them. And some of that could just be the difference in, this is the Midwest, people are a little maybe more easier going and that kind of thing. But I would worry in our market, we would scare them off if we did it. It's a great idea though.
All right. So you do your buyer orientation, kind of building the rapport with them and all that before.
Correct. But if I bought that lead and we went to see that house, we would give them that one freebie showing. And then we would do a buyer meeting with, let's talk about how this is going to go and how I can help you. And, if this doesn't work for you, it's okay for us to not work together. So you have choices. So do I.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Good job. Excellent. Wendy, you have your hand up?
Yes. I couldn't find the little hand raiser over here. Sorry. So at the retreat, you mentioned you buy leads from Zillow. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Do you have any other source of online leads that's worked for you besides Zillow, just being more cost effectively?
So we have the company that did our website is Curator, and that is Chris Smith behind it. He speaks at NAR and things like that. We have a lead, so it's a lead generating website, and it feeds into a CRM that then we can nurture, we can follow up, we can do all kinds of things with that. So we get legitimate leads from that. The person that does marketing for me is the one that takes care of all the stuff that goes on social media with it. But I just know that statistically, leads that are generated from the internet like that, I think the average time to curate those leads are 18 months. So yeah, we need to touch them and we need to do all of those things, but it's a one-off if that is an immediate sale. That's why we've got to go find business.
I understand. And then one more. What is your script, so to say, to disarm the lead within like 2 minutes? So once
lead and talking with them on the phone?
Yeah, like just talking to them, and that way kind of like bring their guard off, if that makes sense. Because you know, when you call like,
so do you mean like on a Zillow call? Is that what you mean?
yeah, so on the landing page, on the other ones where they're going to be more like nurturers, and they're like, hey, we're not ready, we're afraid, like all these objections. Like, what is your go-to script if you have any?
Yeah, and we have a dialer also tied in to our CRM, so we can dial right from our CRM and we can record the call and we'll go back and listen to calls and that kind of thing. But and again, this is the Midwest, so people maybe aren't as forthright as other markets, but I would say something like, Hi, Wendy, this is Laura Heigl calling from Century 21 Sheets. And it looks to me like you have started a home search and you're looking at Carmel. And I see, because they set it up with criteria, and it looks to me like your price range is 600,000 to 800,000. And I just wanted to check and see, is the criteria right for you? Are you getting homes that meet your needs? And then I launch into kind of a conversation. Well, what's your timing? Is my criteria right? What's your timing? What questions can I answer for you in buying a home, moving them towards having a meeting and knowing more information? And sometimes they'll say, well, I'm just looking, I was playing on the computer. All right, well then that's fine. We still throw them in nurture. But otherwise we can kind of set it. Are they a hot prospect or what are they? And following up, and that CRM, and I'm sure you guys use CRMs that do this kind of thing. We set tasks for follow-up that gives us calendars, appointments, and that kind of thing. Okay. So I just kind of start by asking, did I get the information correct? Because they are registering. So, hey, have I got the information correct? And sometimes they'll say, what? Up to 800? No, our price point is 450. Well, so now I'm in there, I'm adjusting it. So we start sending them homes that are relevant.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Good job. Thanks, Wendy. Good work, Laura. Thank you. So Patty from our Covina office asked, what's the CRM that you guys are using? Is it something specific?
We're currently using Chime, and Chime is very similar to Follow Up Boss. If you guys have used Follow Up Boss before, Curator switched, and that is why we switched from Follow Up Boss. The mechanics are just about identical to Follow Up Boss.
Good. Wow. We actually supply Follow Up Boss for the company.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. And then Ayana asked a question, but Ayana, you there?
Yes, it was just getting clarity on when she sends the sample, the contract to the buyer. Is that before the consultation or after? And you
No, it's at it, Ayana, and ultimately, even because I really want them to come into my office as opposed to a coffee shop. And so I will give it to them as homework, or if I'm collecting information from them at that point, I'm verifying their email is correct and that kind of thing. And I'll say, would you rather I just send it to you, and I can send this to you electronically, but I have that conversation when I'm doing that buyer consult.
Okay.
All
And
right.
Question. Quick
Good.
question.
Go ahead, Abigail.
What else do you add on the packet that you send them home with besides the offer?
So we have a buyer guide that we have tweaked. We printed it out before, but we mostly do that online now. We have it done online. My marketing person did a really nice job putting it together, and it kind of walks through the buying process, like what the steps look like. I've got my pre-approval, I'm shopping for homes, I'm under contract, I'm writing an offer, all of these pieces. And then in there, it also is kind of a who's who on our team. So, you know, when we penned, you're going to hear from my transaction coordinator, and he's going to send you dates that go on your calendar and they go on my calendar, just to kind of give an overview of what the process looks like. And we're sending that electronically now because it saves printing costs. And I think people just throw it away.
Good thought. Thanks, Laura. Go ahead, Tyrone.
Yes, hi, Laura. I would like to know, I know that you have a lot of time and maybe a lot of information and strategy when agents have to deal with family members or other members who require special needs and a lot of time. What would you recommend, or what would some of your other strategies or ideal be with agents who have to deal with sort of the same situation?
I would say time block and control your schedule, and early on, and as you can, figure out what you have to do, what your must-to-dos as opposed to your nice-to-dos, and let some of those things go. So it was super important to me that I did that drive home from school with my children. So I just built that into my day. I used the time before it for calls. I candidly gave up cleaning my house. When I stayed home at that point, I cleaned our house. I decided that it is more but I want my house to be clean. So I don't want you guys to think we should be condemned, but we hired somebody, and I could stay home and clean my house for 8 hours